my respectful pranams from Devasanskriti Vishwavidyalaya, Shantikunj Haridwar in India. We are located right here in the foothills of the Himalayas next to Mother Ganga, and we are conveying our utmost gratitude, cordial thanks and heartfelt greetings from Haridwar, which is one of the most sacred and ancient cities of India, to our friends there in Klaipeda. With University of Klaipeda and especially with the School of Holistic Health Sciences, we have got a very extensive and wonderful collaboration with Professor Vidutas, with Dr. Eleta. All of them are very close to us, and we feel immense proud and great delight in seeing the efforts that they are making in making the wisdom of yoga and Ayurveda known to everyone. So our most sincere thanks to them. We wanted to be with you on this special occasion, but unfortunately because of the current global pandemic situations which is affecting everyone, this possibility had to be nullified, and that's why we are offering this session through the online mode on a very important concept called the human excellence. If we have to understand the significance of it, then we have to teleport ourselves to about 2400 years ago in the history of especially India, or rather humanity. If we go back, then we will find that there were multiple schools of philosophy at the time when Patanjali was still writing the Yoga Sutra, Kautilya was writing the Arthashastra, and many learned scholars from India, from Takshila to Nalanda, they were writing significant scriptures on the land of India. And that time almost everyone, each and every one of them, they were looking for the ultimate pinnacle of the human possibility. If we read the yoga philosophy or the Yoga Sutra, the last frontier that they were looking for, samadhi, yama niyam, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan and samadhi. Or even if we look through the Kriya Yoga, tapaswadhyaya, shuparidhan, still samadhi, vivek khyate. Or if we look at the Abhyas and Vairagya, then still samadhi, sabhi samadhi, nirbhi samadhi. So the ultimate pinnacle of the human possibility, each of them were trying to look for. If we go through the Vedantic scriptures, the ultimate pinnacle was looking for the nirvana, kaivalya or moksha. Whichever way we look into this possibility, one question that was common in almost every single pursuit that emerged from Indian wisdom tradition was that why this human life was given to us, what was the reason. And Gurudev used to say that there are only two possibilities. Either we got the human life by default, a chemical reaction has taken place and we are here, or we have got a human life as a blessing. And if we have got a human life as a blessing, then we have to definitely look into the reasons that why this human life has been given to us, what is our purpose, what is our real responsibility, what is the accountability. If you look at the definition of the yoga in Bhagavad Gita, when Bhagwan Krishna is trying to explain to Arjun, then he says, Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tvaktva dhananjaya siddha siddhyo samabhutva samatvam yoguchyate. And then he goes further, second chapter, 50th verse, he says, buddhi yukto jahatiha ubhe sukrita dushkrite tasmad yoga yujjasva yoga karmasu kaushalam. Yoga is the excellence of all actions. If the real yoga would come in anyone's life, then every single dimension of their life, physical, social, emotional, spiritual, every single facet of their life should reach to its ultimate pinnacle. And that is what this presentation is going to talk about, that what could be the final possibility, how we can make our life much more meaningful, which is there in the wisdom traditions, not only in India but everywhere else also. But we have to look for that in the contemporary context. There is a very beautiful story that comes in the Indian scriptures, and the stories of a man who read somewhere that in the village that he used to live, there was a river, and next to the river there were millions of stones like on the bank of the river. And he read that among these millions of stones, one stone is the stone of Paras, and Paras is a mythological stone. If you touch that Paras with any metal, that metal would turn into gold. So idea was that if he could find that kind of stone, then he thought that he would be rich and he wanted to find it. But how would you find? Among millions of stones, they all look the same. How would you find that which of them is the stone of Paras? So he made a routine. He made a routine that every morning he would go with a iron powder on the left hand, and then he would pick up the stone, touch it here, and if this powder would turn into gold, then it is fine. If not, then he would throw it into the water, so that he won't have to pick up the same stone again and again. It went fine. For one day or 1 week, it was absolutely fine. He remembered why he was going every morning. He was passionate about it. He was looking forward to it. But then after a week, it became a habit. He was just picking up the stone, touching it here, throwing it in the water. And then he forgot that why I was picking it up and why I was throwing it in the water. It just became a habit, like every morning to go next to the river, picking it up, touching it here, and doing this. Just like for us, life becomes a habit. We are doing everything, like getting up in the morning, going to the job, doing our things, but then essentially we forget what is the purpose, why we are doing it. So he was doing exactly the same thing. And then 1 year went, 10 years went, 20 years went. One day he picked up the stone, touched it here, threw in the water. 100 meters later, he looked at the powder and it turned into gold. But the stone was gone. He had the gold, but the stone was gone. Same is with the human life. By the time we realized that we could have lived this life with many possibilities or many blessings, or we could have turned it into any kind of adventure, it becomes too late. The famous Nobel Prize winner who wrote a poem, who got the Nobel Prize for Literature about 12 years ago, I forgetting the name, a Japanese author, he wrote a wonderful poem. He wrote a poem and he said that every morning I look at the birds and I wonder, they can fly anywhere, then why they are sitting on the same tree and same branch every day? And then I look at myself. We do the same. We can go anywhere, we can do whatever we want to, we can touch any possibility, but we keep repeating the same routine every day. Breaking that routine and looking for a divine possibility is the life of excellence, and that is what we are trying to offer through this presentation. So one reason to offer this presentation was to look into the ancient Indian Eastern wisdom and to understand that in the contemporary context, that how all these things that made absolute sense 2500 years ago, and people were living along those lines based on those foundations and principles, with the time definitions have not changed, manifestations have changed. How we can change our own life based on those wisdom traditions and make it more meaningful, purposeful, make it more with a sense, motive, agenda and purpose. That is the concept of the human excellence. One reason to share this presentation was that, and another reason was a very personal reason. When I was working as a doctor in London, then one night we had a boy presenting to our clinic, and this boy was 27 years old. He was very good in academics. He topped the class in University of Cambridge. His father was one of the richest men in London. And then the night he came to us, he had very bad condition. He started to take cocaine. So the people who are taking cocaine for long period of time, they develop a peculiar kind of hallucination called Lilliputian hallucination. It comes from the word Lilliput, small people. So he was seeing small people all over the body, like they were not there, imaginary people, but he was seeing them all over the body. And because he also developed the diabetes, he was using the insulin syringe to dig them out, taking these people out, and there were 27 holes in the body. It was a dreadful condition. So medical team had to look after him for 3 months, and every time they were trying to give him food or nutrition or the blood supply, he was fighting with them. He was taking the IV cannulas out, and it was very bad condition. It took them 3 months to make him better. One day when we were having a discussion, I asked him, I said, why are you so angry with yourself? What is the reason for you to be so angry with yourself? And he said, I am not angry with me, but I am angry with my father. And I asked why. He said, well, imagine a normal person. A normal person is looking for the next podium in their life. Like they have got house or they have got education, they look for a decent job. Once they have got a decent job, they look for a good house. They have got a house, they look for family. So you are always looking for something next to accomplish. He said, I was 16 years old when I got Ferraris in gift, I got helicopters in gift. So he had no place to go up but only to go down. The path to ascent was blocked, but the path to decline was absolutely open for him. So he chose a path to go down. And then he said that I started to take drugs, and this is what my life became. I said, well, your father may not be responsible. He did not want to destroy your life on purpose. But even if you think that your father is responsible, the question that is worth asking that whose life it is. Are you going to take the responsibility for your life, or are you going to live your life blaming your father for it? And that's it. Did not see him again, and 3 years later he wrote a letter, a greeting card from South Africa, and then he mentioned his story in that. He said that that night when we had the discussion, it really pinched my heart, and he said that he went on a world tour, ended up in India, and went to a very small part in India that we call as Bastar. It's a very mostly tribal area, remotest part of India, and he went there. There he saw a farmer, and farmer had no clothes, and he had 4 children and big family, but they were very happy, hardly any money but very happy. They even invited this man to come and join him for lunch or dinner, whatever they were having. And he was very surprised. He thought that these people have no money, how come they are so happy? So he asked his interpreter to ask the farmer, and he said, could you ask him that how come he is so happy? And when interpreter asked him the question, farmer said in return, he said, who told him I have got nothing? He said, tell him I have got family. And he wrote in the greeting card, he said that the moment I heard, I was so shocked that I immediately took the flight back home and reached London, hugged my father, and we both cried for 4 hours. He said, first time we realized that there was so much to share. We were living in the same house, under the same roof, but like strangers. He said, first time I realized that life is not supposed to be a reason to feel burdened about. It's not a journey of pain and suffering, but it's a journey of happiness and bliss. And then he asked the question that how do I make this life blissful? Answer to that question is here in this presentation called Human Excellence, that we make journey of life or our life blissful if we have got purpose inside. If we have got no purpose, it becomes a burden. If there is a purpose, then every second becomes a celebration. So this presentation is a journey, like I said. It's a journey that goes through 3 different segments. First segment is to understand the concept of life from the eyes and from the glasses of the enlightened people, the people who lived their life with a sense, meaning and purpose, the people who had life like a music, because life is not like a mathematics. You can't give people the packages for their life. Life is like music. Every single second of our life is like a new challenge, and we have to learn through those challenges and through those opportunities that how we can give a new definition to our life. So from the eyes of great people, from the eyes of enlightened souls, from the eyes of illuminated beings, how do they define the purpose of life? This is the first segment. And second is that on that parameter, on that eligibility, on that criteria, what are we doing? And when we say we means humanity. And third is that if we are not doing something right, then what do we need to do? And this is the journey of human excellence. And I said that we start from the words of great people, and you may be seeing on your screen a saying from a very learned saint from India called Swami Vivekananda. He lived only up to the age of 39, but lived like the life of 500 people at the same time. He said many great things. He took the concept of Neo Vedanta to the Western mindset and was well respected on both sides of the continent. And many people remember him for his great oratory skills and vivacity and like the great power of knowledge and wisdom. But he also had a heart of compassion, and he said many great things. Among this one is of greatest importance to everyone. He said, all the power in the universe is already ours. Ours means human beings. It is we who have put our hands before our eyes and cry that it is dark. If people close the doors, they draw the curtains, switch off the lights, and there is a rising sun, but we turn our head from that direction and start complaining that there is no sun. It's not a fault of the sun. Sun is there, but we are not looking in that direction. Same is with the human life. The moment the human life was given to us, all kinds of possibilities were invested into us, and everyone has been given the possibility. Everyone has been given the possibility. Abraham Lincoln, he failed 15 times. You can imagine 15 times, out of which 13 times his money, you need to fight for the election, that was completely taken away because he could not even get the votes enough to get the penalty paid. And then he became the most successful president in the history of the United States. So everyone has their ups and downs. Just because one night is dark does not mean that we would have all the nights dark. We have the possibility to change our life whenever we would like to change. This is the beauty of the human life. In the Sanskrit, when you read, there is a story of a great scholar called Varadaraj, and Varad means great. Varad also means buffalo, and he was called Varad Raj, not because he was great, but because his mind was like a buffalo. Teachers actually hated him. Parents said, what the hell is wrong with you? Like friends said, don't sit with us. And this guy, he decided that I will change my life, and he became Varadaraj. He became Varadaraj to the extent, the Shrestha, that now whenever Sanskrit grammar is being taught, they use the textbook of the Varadaraj for whenever you are reading the Sanskrit grammar books, you have to read the Varadaraj textbook. So everyone has got the possibility. And Vivekananda, when he said this, he shared a very beautiful story of the Vedanta, and a story was of a lioness. Lioness was pregnant, about to hunt, and a hunter came and shot the lioness. So she died, but before dying she gave birth to the cub, and lion cub had no mother, no father. There were a herd of deers passing by, and when they saw this lion cub struggling, so they took him out of compassion in his herd. And this lion cub forgot that he was a lion, because there was no lion around. He started to behave like a deer. He forgot that he was the Lion King. He started to behave like a Samba, and then he was going around. And one day, herd of deers were going, and a big lion came. Big lion roared, and the moment he roared, all the deers started to run. This lion also started to run. So big lion thought, what the hell? Deers are running, that is fine, but why this lion is running? So he forgot about the deers. He said to the lion, where are you going? He said, I am a deer. He said, no, you are not a deer, you are a lion. He said, no, I am a deer. So he took him to the water. He said, see, is there a difference between you and me? And the moment the lion looked inside and realized that he and the big lion are the same, his roar came back. Sometimes for a lion to remember that he is a lion, you need another lion. Otherwise he forgets that he is a lion, he thinks I am a deer. Sometimes for us to remember that we are divine souls, we need Vivekananda, we need Gurudev, we need all the enlightened souls of the world. I mean, this presentation is created in India, that's why there is multiple references to the great people in India. It does not mean great people are only in India, they are everywhere. You can take the example of anyone, but the idea remains the same, that if they can live their life with that possibility, then the same possibility lies with us. And this is what this next slide actually is telling you, that human life has got this uniqueness, that it is full of possibilities. If you look at a dog, you can't say that, oh well, the dog of the Vilnius is more dog and dog of Klaipeda is less dog, or dog of cat of the Riga is more cat and the cat of the Ventspils is less cat. You can't say that. The dogs are dogs, cats are cats, but human beings have got the possibility. In human beings, some of them you can say, oh, he has got more humanity and he has got less humanity. We have got a spectrum. All the worst kind of souls, they come through the human beings, but all the great souls, they also come from the human beings. We have got the people ranging from all kinds of possibility. If we start to descend in our possibility, if we start to go down, we could be criminal, we could be murderer, we could be the ultimate sinner. to the people, like, if you look at them and you think whether they have got the humanity or it's completely gone. Like, in some people only the structure of human beings intact, but their concept of humanity is disappeared. Like, they behave like animals, they live like animals, their only primal passions are there. But some human beings, you look at them and their positivity, their radiance, their divinity is so strong, then you feel like, you are meeting with the God. And these two possibilities are only there in the life of human beings. We have got both possibility, and that is what this next slide is actually telling you, that life is nothing but a journey from B to the D. B is birth, D is death. Neither the birth nor the death are in our hand. Both are not in our hand. But what is left in the middle? C, choice, karma. That is in our hand. We have got a choice. We have got a choice to do right karma. We have got a choice to do right deeds whenever we want to do. And everyone has got this possibility. Whenever they want to change their life, they can change it. Whichever way we would like to take. We are sitting in the seat of the driver, and we have got the ultimate possibility to take our vehicle, our car in whatever direction we would like to take, and this responsibility lies with us. Sir Edmund Hillary, the first person who scaled the Mount Everest, he failed 15 times. Failed 15 times before going to the Mount Everest. And if you are going there, the idea is that you are supposed to scale to the next level of the Mount Everest, and they give you an opportunity to go 3 times. And if you fail, then fine, you go back, retrain yourself, and come back after 2 years. So he failed. And the last night he could have scaled. He looked at the Mount Everest and he said to the Mount Everest, he said, listen, you are a rock. You cannot grow anymore. As a human, I can. As a human, we all can. As a human, we all have the possibility to make the right choice in our life, to take the right course of our life, to reach to the right kind of possibility. And that is the life that Aurobindo talked about. He said it's not a possibility only with some privileged souls. It's not like that only some people have got this possibility that they can live to the absolute divinity. Everyone. There is a story of a murderer in India who was killing people, and he met Buddha and he became the greatest known bhikshu ever known. He became from murderer to bhikshu. There is a story of another man who was robbing people and he became from robber to the great sage. So everyone, even the worst kind of person has got the possibility, but the duty lies with the person, not with the divinity. Duty lies with the person. The accountability is ours. Life is ours. Accountability is ours. So Aurobindo said that everyone has got something divine in them. Something is own. A chance of perfection and strength in however small a sphere which God offers him to take or refuse. The task is to find it, develop it, use it. This is what we can call excellence. Excellence is actually refining that possibility that we all have got inside us. We all have got this kind of possibility. The coal and diamond, they both are carbons. Only difference lies in one covalent bond. So one covalent bond is missing and carbon becomes the coal becomes the diamond. And we all have got this possibility inside, and whenever we want, we can change it and we can become like Aurobindo did or Gurudev did or Vivekananda did. We have got that possibility. And even the worst kind of people have got this possibility, like Aurobindo is saying. There comes a story of man, most of you would know, the story of Mahabharata. So Mahabharata is a battle that was fought between two sets of brothers, and they both were cousins. But one set of brothers, Kauravas, they were doing everything wrong. Whenever we talk about adharma, we give the reference of Kauravas. Other side of the brothers, Pandavas, they were doing everything right. Whenever we give the reference of dharma, righteousness, we talk about Pandavas. So the uncle, he had a question to the bad one, Duryodhan, villain of Mahabharata. He said to him, Duryodhan, tell me one thing. You and your brother Yudhishthir, you both went to the same school. You were taught by the same teachers. Dronacharya, Kripacharya, they were teaching you, and you were in the same school, you were living in the same dormitories, you were living in the same hostel. Still, your brother does everything right and you do everything wrong. What the hell is wrong with you? And then Duryodhan answered, Janapi dharmam nachame pravritti. I know what is dharma, I know what is right, won't do it. Janapi adharmam nachame nivritti. I know what is adharma, I know what is wrong, won't leave it. Kenopi devena hridistitena yatha niyuktosmi tatha karomi. It's like somebody is living inside me, and wherever it appoints me, I feel obliged to do it. So people know what is right and wrong. Even Duryodhana knows what is right and wrong. He just takes the wrong path because it is easier one to take, and it's a story not only of Duryodhana but of everyone. People don't need information, they need determination. They know what is right. They know what is the right path to take, but they still take the wrong path because this one is easier one to take. And Gurudev said that everyone, if everyone is able to remember the divine possibility that they have in man, inside them, then there is no other heaven we have to look for. It's right here. Most of you who may not be familiar with his name, he was the most influential and groundbreaking and prolific scholar of India, who wrote more than 3,400 books. Last year we tried to digitize every single book that he wrote, and we could digitize only 3,397. Still 94 are left to be uploaded. He is the only person in the history of India or history of entire world who had translated entire Indian scriptures, and it's not an easy task. Many people think only translation, it's not like that. Vedic Sanskrit and contemporary Sanskrit are two different languages, same like Common Greek and Benjamine Greek. So if you if right now we are trying to get two books translated, and hardly anyone is familiar with the terminology. So not only he translated, he made them available for free, and in 3,400 books that I am talking about, those translations are not included. So you can imagine the mammoth kind of work that he did, and apart from that, he established the entire organization, which now has 150 million members, more than 4,000 global centers in every single part of the world, and he is well respected in India. And last 5 years of his life, when he mostly talked prolifically and prophetically, because almost every single thing that is humanity and mankind are going through in the current times, he talked about that in late 1980s. I would strongly suggest some of you, if you can read the English, to read the books called Problems of Today and Solutions of Tomorrow, and the Great Moments of Change. We will hope to transfer them to you, but they are, every single word that is mentioned in those books are basically talking about the current times, and how from this darkness we have to find a path of divinity and light and blessings from here. And he talked about in last 5 years that every single human being have got a lost divine inside, and if we can find that, then there is no other heaven we have to look for. So from the eyes of great people, the human life that we have got was given to us so that we can leave a meaningful legacy. We are not here to increase the population of the planet. We are here so that we can leave a heritage, we can leave a meaningful legacy from here on. But unfortunately, when we look around, we see that humanity is going through multiple challenges, and especially since we have had this scientific and technological advancement, many problems we started to encounter which were never there before, 300 years or 400 years history of significant scientific development is there, but at the same time multiple health problems have emerged, climate situations with the climate, global warming have emerged, problems with the energy, ethics, from all kinds of population to pollution has emerged. I am not going to talk about all of them, I am going to talk about some of them which are of greatest significance to us. And first of them is the issue of the environment. In environment, we have got already the multiple problems. Almost every single dimension of the environment is already polluted, from air to water to soil to atmosphere to sea to ocean. However, the equation right in front of you is of greatest significance. This tells that the earth is 4.6 billion years old, and if we scale that to 4 to 6 years, then we as human beings have been here for 4 hours. This is just to highlight the fact that our journey is very small in the journey of this planet. If you make a 24-hour clock, then human beings would appear a minute and 17 seconds before the midnight. Rest everything would happen without us, but we would appear only a minute before the midnight. So we are not too old in the journey of this planet, and we became in charge at a very early age, only 15,000 years history of human being is there, but we literally became the in charge of this planet, and in this time we have done many things significant. Even dinosaurs did not rule the planet like we are doing at the moment, and no other species can basically challenge the human beings. We are the only one, like, we can destroy ourselves, but other than that, no other species can really threaten our existence. So in last 300 to 400 years, many good things have happened, but also what had happened that 50% of world's forest is gone. And of course, if it would continue like the way it is happening at the moment, there would probably be no future to the humanity. We would really kill, like, any kind of possibilities, or we will annihilate the future of humanity right in front of our eyes. And, like, many people think, like, okay, this we should do. And the reason actually I'm sharing is not because the common people have any problem with it. Common people actually are more conscientious than anywhere else. People who are listening to this presentation, I'm very sure that almost everyone is very conscientious about it. The problem is that people sitting at the top, they seem to ignore the fact that this is something of greatest importance to us, and we have to make a decision about it now, otherwise it would be point of no return. We are already, like, talking about that 2024 is the point of no return, after which nothing, like, whatever we would do may not be sustainable or of any significance. And I remember, like, attending a meeting where like 30 Nobel Prize winners were there, and you would think that they would be talking sense, but what they were talking about like how to mine the moon. Like, we are here on holiday and we have destroyed this planet, now we can go and destroy some other planet. It is just like, crazy that something that is so obvious, that you plant a tree and you get oxygen, people won't do it. And you tell people that you plant a tree and you will get free Wi-Fi signal, people would probably do it because their priorities have changed. And this happened because we wanted progress, and nobody is complaining about progress. Without progress, we won't be talking, like, I am sitting in Haridwar and you are listening to it in Klaipeda. This won't be possible. So of course the progress is necessary. Problem is that how we are handling the progress. The question is that how we are handling the technology. Many things, like, of course are good, but then some problems that came and that we have to find solution at the early stage before it becomes too late is what I am suggesting here. One thing is that with extreme scientific progress, one challenge that came is that people have become more lonely than ever before. Earlier times, people were going out, they had their social life, they were, like, going outside. But now, since everything is inside the phone, like, your movies are there, your relationships are there, your shopping is there, people are, like, spending completely time inside the phone. They are forgetting what to do with other things. Like, as a satire, 4 years ago or 6 years ago, there is a university in England, and they offered a program called How to Talk to Normal People, because everyone is chatting on the phone, so they are forgetting how to talk to normal people. They are clueless if somebody appears, like, in front of them. So they offered a program as a joke that how to talk to normal people, but still 100 people applied for it. So you can imagine, like, what is happening. It's so crazy that, like, the number of miles that we use on our fingers, like, when we are scrolling down, if we start to count that, then probably we are losing more calories than actually running on the street. It's just like, people are becoming more and more engrossed in their phones and technology, that they are becoming more lonely than ever before. In addition to that, we are also, what we are doing is that with this advancement in technology, people are becoming more impatient. Earlier times, like, you would send a letter and people would receive it. I'm not saying that people should send the letter. I'm saying that what is happening, like, nowadays, when you send a message and message is delivered and people can see that blue tick is there and it's already been delivered, people start to get impatient that why the hell other person is not answering, like, and it's just they can't come out of the phone, otherwise they will come out of the phone and kill the other person. It's just the girl in Florida, although anything can happen in Florida, but, like, 9 years ago, she killed her husband in Florida because he was 2 minutes late liking her picture on the Facebook. So you can imagine, like, the level of impatience. That's why so much road rage is happening. That's why people are, like, not patient enough to wait for anything. Why we are not seeing any Tansen being born, or a Picasso being born, or a Beethoven being born, or a Mozart or Bach being born, because people are not patient enough to work on one discipline for long period of time. They want to change it immediately. If there is no immediate gain, if there is no instant gain, they want to change it. So the level of patience is slowly going. In addition to that, the attention level of the people is also dithering. 1970s, there was a piece of research done in Cambridge University is to check that how long people can follow a particular theme. And in 1970s, they found that it was about 23 minutes. 23 minutes on an average, if people are well fed and they have well rested, they could follow a particular theme. Now when they repeated it, it's down to 18 seconds. So within 18 seconds, people's attention span is gone. You can check that in opera houses, you can check that in restaurants, you can check that in the musical concerts, that people are inside, they are there to listen to the concert, but their attention is gone within 18 seconds. They can't follow a peculiar theme for long period of time. So we are becoming more lonely, we are becoming more like impatient, and our attention level is going. In addition to that, the relationships that we have, they are also taking the toll. So a famous philosopher, he said that relationships were there so that we can love each other. People were created to be loved. Things were created to be used. And the reason world is in chaos, because we are loving the things and we are using the people. We are manipulating the relationship. So people are busy updating their status on the Facebook for 2 hours, forgetting the real people. They are completely forgetting it. It's just a pseudo world that we are offering. When Neil Armstrong went to moon and the whole crew, they took 6 pictures in total. 6 pictures they took Apollo 11. And now people are going to toilet and taking 100 selfies. It's just we are the only generation which is busy documenting doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. I am sitting and I am standing, I am eating, I am not eating. So people are busy updating themselves. It's not like that I have discovered the cure for COVID, or I have to now update the something that I will get the Oscar or Nobel Prize for, but people are just documenting doing nothing. So this is the situation. And then ironically, we are living in a world where deleting history has become more important than creating history. So this is the unfortunate reality of today, that we have got the bigger houses than before, but families are gone. We have got more education, but common sense is gone. We have got better medicine, better doctors, better hospitals, but health is suffering. Then we are reached to the moon, but unfortunately people don't even know who their neighbors are. And we have better income than before, but peace of mind is gone. There comes a story of a king in India who wanted to conquer entire India, conquered half of it, and then he met his guru, and guru said, why are you doing it? He said, I want to conquer entire India. He said, imagine you have conquered the entire India, what you would do? He said, oh, I'll make a beautiful palace. And he said, then I will number of servants. He said, then I will have jewels. He said, imagine you had everything, what you would do as the last? He said, I would relax, I would do nothing. The guru said, that's what I am doing right now. Why do you have to conquer the India to do it? If you want the peace of mind, you don't have to run for the money to get it. And then we have got better knowledge than before, but wisdom is gone. And unfortunately, worst of all, we have got more human beings, but probably humanity is gone. And this is the life that we have. We are running after the things before even realizing that why are we running. There comes this beautiful story written by Gorky, you would know, called 6 Feet Underground. And Gorky wrote about a man, he read somewhere that in Siberia they are giving land for free. So he went there. He asked the elder of the village, he said, are you giving land for free? He said, absolutely free. He said, what do I have to do to get it? He said, nothing. In the morning we will give you 4 flags. Moment sun would rise, you start to run. And you go north, plant one, east, plant another one, west, another one. And in the south we are standing. Whatever you cover belongs to you. Come back and plant the last one here in the south. All belongs to you. He said, that's it. He said, yeah. He said, how come no one has won it so far? He said, well, run tomorrow morning, you will know. Next day morning he started to run. Sun rose and he started to run. More he ran, more greedy he became. He said, oh well, I have to run only like one day. Just like people start to become greedy. Only one life is there. I can make more houses, I can get more cars, I can have more this. So he was running and he started to become more greedy. I can go far. He said, why I am going with food? So he threw away his lunch, water he threw away. He said, why I am going with the clothes? I can go far, with the without clothes. So he started to run without clothes. 2 o'clock he remembered, planted one, east another one, west another one. And Gorky has written that this man was, crawling back to the finish line because energy was completely gone. He had no food, he had no water, he was running without the clothes, naked in the Siberia. So you can imagine, he was having hypothermia. 6 feet before the finish line he collapsed. And then he collapsed and lost the consciousness. When he regained the consciousness, he looked at the elder of the village. They were clapping. They said, oh, very good, you came too far. Other became so greedy they never returned. They are still planting the flags. So he said that what you would do with this land that is left between my fingers and the finish line. They said, we are waiting for you to die, we will bury you there. That's the only land you take, 6 feet underground. We are running, but forgetting that we can't go more than that. People are buying things they don't even need. With the money they don't even have to impress the people they don't even like. So our life has become a race before we even realize. Other person has got a better phone and all of a sudden my phone starts to look older to me. Other person has got a better car and all of a sudden my car starts to look broken to me. So we become like that. We are standing in different races, we don't even realize. What we need to change it is to change our attitude. Like Gurudev said, is to have excellence in our life, and for that he talked about 4 things. He said to have purpose in our life, to have the right attitude for it, to live with compassion, to work with commitment. All together we have a life of excellence. And for purpose, Gurudev said something very special. He said, without purpose, our life is like a pendulum, moving a lot, but never reaching to a destination. Some people are so busy, you can barely get a time out of them. You go and they are constantly busy. If we try to set up a time to meet, it would be like 3 weeks from now or 6 weeks from now, very busy. We confuse being busy with having a purpose. Just because we are busy does not mean that we have got a purpose. Purpose does not come from what we do, but why we do it. What is the intention behind it? And many people think that we are too young to have a purpose, or we don't have money, or we don't have the education to have the purpose. That's why there are some examples in front of you. The person on the left hand side that you see, they are real life examples. And this gentleman on the left hand side, his name is James Harrison. He is a bricklayer from Australia. He works as a laborer. And this photograph was taken when he was 73 years old, and he was given the highest award that any civilian can receive in Australia. Then he was given another such award in UK. He was given the knighthood. Then France also awarded him with the highest award that France could offer. Many other countries actually did the same. So what did he do special? What does he do? He works as a bricklayer. He had no formal education. So what was the reason why he was giving such an award? Well, the story is that he was 13 years old, coming on a bike, and a lorry hit him and he was lying on a pool of blood. And people took him to the hospital. They admitted him to the ICU. 14 people had to donate blood to save his life. And when he regained the consciousness, he became better, he recuperated. He said that the first thing I would do when I will turn 18, which is the legal age to donate blood, is that I will donate blood. And in his mind he thought that I will donate 14 units of blood. When he went to the hospital, turned 18, went to the hospital. They checked his blood that it was safe enough to be given to other people. When they checked, they realized that his blood had such kind of antibodies or such kind of special protein that if given to those people or those babies whose mother and father had different blood groups, which is rhesus incompatibility, then their life could be saved. So he started to donate blood. And from the age of 18 to 73, when this photograph was taken, this one man had donated 1,200 units of blood, saving lives of 2 million babies. And his blood was sent to 34 different countries. And when he turned 81, the government had to ask him. He isn't he did not stop by himself. Government to ask him that after the age of 81, you can't donate it anymore. So by then he had already donated 1381 units of blood plasma. You can imagine, like, how much. And one person with a small purpose, with one significant purpose of only donating blood, affected the lives of 3.2 million people. So we don't have to have a big purpose, we just have to have the right purpose. Like, we have the right purpose, we can influence the life of many people. There is a story of a farmer in India called Hajari, and he planted 2 trees in the morning, 2 trees in the evening, and in his lifetime he planted 90,000 trees, turning the entire city into a forest. Anyone can do it. There is a story of a man called Dashrath Manji. He, in his free time, he started to break the mountain and he created a road within the mountain. So you can imagine, anyone having a purpose, anyone having a determination can influence the life of many people. Then there is a photograph of a young boy next to the photograph of James Harrison, and this young boy, his name is Carl, and he won $1,000 in the scavenger hunt. Mother said, what do you want to do with the money? Like, where do you want to go and what do you want to do? So he said, well, can we give this money to the girl living next door? She has got, like, blood cancer, leukemia. And he phoned the mother, and when he phoned the mother of the girl that you are seeing standing next to him, she started to cry. She said, I'm not going to take money from 8-year-old boy. But she told the story to Chicago Tribune. Chicago Tribune published it. In the first day after reading the story, money was collected to save the lives of 200 to 500 babies. You can imagine, anyone can have a purpose. We don't have to have like a degree from Cambridge or Harvard to have the purpose in our life. We just have to have the good heart to do it. Then comes the story of a very determined lady from India. She was living in a very small village of India. She was given the highest civilian award of this year in India. Her name is Suhashini Mistry, and as you can see from the photograph, she is a vegetable seller. She had no education. She was 21 years old when, like, her husband contracted an infection and died. At that time she had 4 children. The youngest was still 3 months old. And in terms of, like, profession, she was selling vegetable, illiterate woman, became widow at the age of 21, and husband is not there anymore. But she said that if there was a hospital in my village, then I would have saved my husband. So she said, I will open a hospital in the village. And everyone started to laugh. They said, how will you open a hospital in the village? You can barely make the money for the evening. How will you open a hospital? But look at the story of determination. So one of her son, he became the doctor, and he was given a job in a very famous hospital in India called Apollo. But he left the job, returned back to the village. So all the professors, peers and colleagues, they wanted to see what happened, where did he go, so they went. And when they went to meet him and they heard the story of Suhashini Mistry, they started to cry. 37 years were gone. And in 37 years time, this lady, she did not save a single penny for herself. All she was saving to open a hospital in the village. And she could save not more than 250 euros in 37 years. And you can't open a hospital in the village. In fact, you can't pay for a treatment in the hospital. Even if I have got a problem and I want to pay, sometimes the bill would be more than 250 euros. So, not possible. But when people heard this story, one person gave the land for free. Doctor said we will treat it for free. Builder said we will build it for free. Pharmacist said that we will give the medicines for free. An engineer said that we will do everything for free. So she opened a hospital called Humanity Hospital, from poor for poor. Like, and then she was awarded the highest civilian award in India. So you can imagine, anyone can have a determination. We don't have to have a special qualification. We don't need a online course. We don't need a money to have a purpose. We just need a good heart. And if we have got that, then second thing that we require, that you see on your screen, is something that in Hindi we say is utsarga. Utsarga means compassion. And there is a very beautiful saying by Gurudev underneath it. Gurudev said that if we are human beings, then the only purpose we have got is humanity. He said that if you don't have a purpose, choose humanity as your purpose. Because if we are living only for ourselves, if we are living only for our greed and decline, then even animal is better. Its skin could be used for something, but we wasted the opportunity. And that is the compassion that we look for. And this is what you see in the photograph, that this boy on the left hand side, he was born blind. He had congenital cataract. Both mother and father, they were 21 years old. They said whatever we wanted to see in this world we have seen, and they both gave their live eye each. We can live with one eye, they said, and they gave one eye to the boy so that he can have a future. This is compassion. Then we have got these two blind men on the other photograph. They were struggling to open the tap of the water, and there was a monkey sitting on the tree top. When he saw them struggling, he came down to open it. When animals have it, then we are human beings. We should have more accountability. First thing is to have purpose. Second thing is to have compassion. Third thing is to have commitment. And whenever the question of commitment comes, you can see, like, that people think that okay, other people had something because they were privileged or they had something. Purposely we have selected the examples of the people who had nothing, but they still lived their life with absolute determination and commitment. The gentleman that you see in the photograph, his name is Terry Fox. He was 20 years old and he got the cancer of the bone, osteosarcoma. And if you look closely, then right leg doctors had to amputate, and they gave him an artificial limb, and he is walking on the artificial limb. Anyone in the same situation, because doctors gave him 5 months to live. They said prognosis is very poor, cancer has spread all over the body, you have got metastasis, and you're not going to live after 5 months. Anyone in the same situation would think about dying. But then he said, well, I may be gone, but there are many people who don't have even the money to get the diagnosis made. Can I do something for them? So he said, I will run on one leg, and if I complete 1 kilometer, then people who would like to do something, they can give $100 for cancer research. So he ran on one leg. He ran non-stop 143 days, covering 5,373 kilometers, collected $200 million for cancer research. Terry Fox. Anyone, person with one leg can have commitment. Then you have got a video clip to be shown.
My name is Jessica Cox and I live in Tucson, Arizona. I'm a motivational speaker. I've traveled to 17 different countries. My situation of being born without arms requires a lot of creativity. I would see all the kids around me climbing up the monkey bars or climbing up the slide, and for me I felt somewhat frustrated because I was prevented from that. I wanted to run up and climb up that slide just like all the other kids. At times I would envision flying over the playground and being Superwoman. I realized that I needed to adapt to the way everyone else did things, and it wasn't about catering to my needs or my special situation, but it was more about me adapting and being creative and coming up with ways of using my feet or using other methods to become independent. Put my pants onto the hook, then I just step into the pants like this, and I wiggle my way into my pants. I've heard the saying a number of times that, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% of how you respond to it. So that's why I fell in love with psychology. Psychology fascinated me in that sense that it really did credit a lot to how we thought. It was a 3-year process to become a pilot. I had to find a specific airplane, and it has 2 less controls than most standard airplanes, and so therefore I can actually keep my right foot on the yoke, my left foot on the throttle. The most incredible, most empowering experience I've ever had. It's that feeling of being free, of being in the sky, and just that incredible feeling of being up there. What I enjoy is not really knowing where I'm going to be next. In the next 4 months, I'm going to be in 4 different countries. And I remember promising myself I would never again wear those fake, heavy, prosthetic arms.
Here's our flight.
We will go out to the different areas of Ethiopia, visit with the families of children with disabilities, and help them overcome their own difference as well, and bring that confidence that I had to develop over the years and help share that with them. The achievement that I am most proud of, I think, is maturing from someone who was angry and upset about being differently able to being someone who was different, to now being able to celebrate that and use it as an opportunity to give hope and inspiration to other people.
And as you can see in the video clip, like, this is a story of a girl who had no arms, and still, she became the only armless pilot of the world. So people can have that. So Terry had only one leg, lived a life of meaning. Jessica had no arms, but still lived a life of meaning. But if you have nothing, if you have no arms and no legs, then what would happen? So comes another video clip for you.
I wasn't ready.
I have no arms and no legs, but I'm very thankful that I have my little chicken drumstick here. People freak out when they see me for the first time. It's so cool. I was at a water slide all by myself. Everyone obviously at the bottom of the slide is looking up and waiting for other people to come down, and here I come and they're freaking out. They're like, like this. And I was so tempted to look at myself and go, what happened? And there were times where I sort of looked at my life and thinking, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. And you keep on concentrating on the things that you wish you had, or the things that you wish you didn't have. And you sort of forget what you do have. And there's no point, I believe, in my life where I wish I had arms and legs, I wish I had arms and legs, I wish I had arms and legs, because wishing won't help. But what I've seen in life are just a couple key principles, and the first thing that I've seen is to be thankful. It's hard to be thankful, man. I tell you, when I was 8 years old, I sort of summed up my life and thought, I'm never going to get married, I'm not going to have a job, I'm not going to have a life of purpose. What kind of a husband am I going to be if I can't even hold my wife's hand? It's a lie to think that you're not good enough. It's a lie to think that you're not worth anything. Oh boy. Woo! It's freezing, I can't feel my hands. I love life. So many people come and say, how come you smile so much? And I'm like, well, it's a long story. But it's very simple at the same time. You see, it's very hard to smile sometimes in life. There are things that happen that you don't know and you don't understand, and you don't know if you're going to get through it. You go through your storms in life and you don't know how long this storm's going to be. And today I want to share with you some principles that I've learned in my life that you can use in yours. Being patient is beautiful. I tell you, it's the hardest thing. But I realize I may not have hands to hold my wife's hand, but when the time comes, I'll be able to hold her heart. I don't need hands to hold her heart. It is scary to know how many girls have eating disorders. It is scary to know how many people are just angry at life because of their situation at home and angry at others. It's scary to know how many people actually feel like they're worth nothing. Every single girl right here, right now, I want you to know that you are beautiful. You are gorgeous just the way you are. And you boys, you're the man.
On this DVD, I share my experiences in life of how I've overcome challenges and seen a new, fresh perspective in life. To be thankful, to dream big, and to never give up. I speak to children, youth, and adults about key issues and principles that I've applied in my life that has given me the strength to conquer all that comes before me.
So now you can understand from the video clips, like the purpose of why we wanted to share those clips with you is absolutely evident. This is to highlight the fact that to have determination in our life, we don't have to rely on external factors. People can have any circumstances, but we still have the mindset in our hand. If our mindset is intact, if our positivity is intact, if our direction is intact, we can do whatever we would like to do in our life. So in the words of Gurudev, first thing that we require is the purpose. Second thing we require is the compassion. Third thing we require is the determination. And fourth thing he said, Utthan, which is collective good. He said, anyone can have, even terrorists think that they have got a purpose, does not mean that they are doing good for humanity. He said the actual excellence comes if we are doing it for collective good, if we are doing to change the world, if we are doing it to make the happiness, bring the happiness in the lives of the people. So he said in this beautiful saying, he said destruction is easy, anyone can do it. For destroying something you don't need a training, but you need a training. You need your sankalpa, you need your determination to bring good to the life of the people. He said that world is not bad only because of the people who are bad, but also because of the people who are good and they don't do anything about it. If people who have got good intention, they come together, then they can change the world. If somebody is walking on the street and someone comes and stabs him, he does not need a degree from a university that I can kill people. But to repair that wound, you need to be a qualified doctor. And to repair the wound that humanity has taken in the current times, everyone has to come together. We all are the doctors of humanity. We all are the doctors of the nature. We all can take a sankalp, we all can take a determination, we all can take something so that the excellence of our life becomes visible. The reason of sharing this presentation is not to share the good slides with you, but to give you an inspiration that the actual purpose of the yogic effort is to change the life completely, is to transform it completely. If we are transforming it, if we are transforming our consciousness, if we are transforming our mindset, if we are transmutating our life and purpose, then actually the life of excellence would come. That is visible in the life of Gurudev, that you see in the photograph, Swami Ramakrishna Paramahans, Maharishi Aravind, Viveka, Swami Vivekananda, and everyone else, so many enlightened souls from the planet. So in the current times when we have got such adverse and difficult circumstances all around us, this presentation is shared with you so that we can have positivity in the life. People are talking about all negative outside, dark and gloom, but the real light comes from within us, and the real light can come if we are living a life of excellence. So I hope that through this presentation you would be able to take that small message, and at the same time I also extend the invitation to each one of you, because we have got the Asia's first and only and largest Center for Baltic Culture and Studies. Many of our students, including the ones who are shooting at the moment this presentation, including the ones who are editing this presentation, including the ones who will talk to you, including the ones who will share this presentation, they all have been in Lithuania. They all were with you in Klaipeda, and many people from Klaipeda have been with us in Haridwar. So actually we only seem distant, but Klaipeda and Haridwar are literally the twin cities. So our best wishes to you, and at the same time I extend that whenever the lockdown period is over, whenever the borders are open, do make a date in your diary, come to Haridwar. You would be very happy to see the Asia's first and only Baltic Center. Pranams to all of you, and thanks for listening this presentation so calmly and diligently. Pranam.